also, film it and let it.
Upload it to Facebook, yes.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is the Drunkduck QUACKCAST. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me is Tance and Baines. Hello.
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 Hi. So this week we're talking about continuity.
Don't know much about.
So this is a subject that's based on your news post, Baines, from Thursday the 23rd. And you've illustrated with your Where's Wally, whatever that guy's name is, with the glasses. You, of course, a photo of you.
Yep.
Which, looking very good. Always photogenic. I love that. Love that image that you used to illustrate those posts. So continuity is something that we have to be aware of as artists, and writers as well. This is something that's multidisciplinary with the creators. But before we get into that, I have to bring up the featured comic. I featured a comic this week called Goddard and Gray. So I'll talk about that now. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Goddard and Gray. Goddard is a peripatetic chap who's suffering the temporary embarrassment of a lack of lodgings. The poor fellow finds himself living rough, homeless in other words, but things change for the better after he hooks up with Gray, a fellow resident of the park that they both share, but a resident who originates somewhere further afield, a very long way it turns out, because Gray is an alien from outer space. Goddard and Gray make a great pair. Gray gets help learning about the Earth, and Goddard gets free food and a couch. This is a newspaper-style comedy comic strip with a small but fun cast of evolving characters and some good jokes. It looks nice and professional, mostly in black and white, but more recent strips are in colour. I quite enjoyed it. The colour looks really good. The whole thing has a very slick, professional look to it without being too slick, so it would fit into that newspaper look very well. It looked really good as a traditional newspaper comic. The later strips are more of a squarish format, so you have 2 by 2 sort of stacked. The earlier comics was done in more of a long ways strip, so 4 panels lengthways pretty much. So it's sort of evolving from that daily newspaper strip into that like a Saturday or Sunday style. So you have a big kind of format to it, and it makes it more readable on a website because the long ways strip is only like 960 pixels wide, whereas you can make things a lot bigger when you stretch vertically. 960 pixels because that's Drunkduck's horizontal limit, unfortunately. Anyway, so it looks quite good. It's quite bold and effective, and yeah, the latest strips are more in colour, so they're a bit more bright and bold, but the black and white ones look good. Anyways, the characters are good. There's a few more than just Goddard and Gray, like this little tiny green fellow, and this the food delivery person who gives them their takeaway foods in the Chinese takeaway. And they're all good characters, and it's a lot of fun, and I hope you like it. It's good for all ages. Yeah, so this is done by Duck Sapien, and it's rated E for everyone. So have a read of Goddard and Gray. And that was the featured comic, Goddard and Gray. And today we're talking about the anthology. No, sorry, that was a that was a continuity joke. So yeah, we're talking about continuity. But before we get into that, I have the featured music to bring up. Gummels has given us a theme again this week, and the name of the theme is How to Half-Ass a Theme to How to Half-Ass Porn Webcomics. And the actual comic is called How to Half-Ass Porn Webcomics the Tons of Late Way. So yeah, I'll just give you the name of that. The theme is called How to Half-Ass a Theme to Half-Ass Porn Webcomics. So this music is...
That's by Tanzarine.
Yes, the noted author of all porn webcomics.
Of course, but, I'm still confused.
Well, yeah, so the
It
name
does
is...
have asses. It's a porn and it has asses. So we're good.
There we are. Yeah, it's a damn long name. It's one of those continuity things. By the time you've gone through the whole name, you forgot what it was.
Yeah.
You have to keep reading back. This one starts slow, but as soon as it takes off, it lets its full groovy glory glow, dancing to the sounds of a wiry electric guitar dressed in a batik caftan and brown corduroy flares. Incense smoke swirling around, noxious and enveloping, like the sound of this cool little tune. So take it away, Gun Wallace, with the theme to How to Half-Ass Porn Webcomics the Tons of Late Way.
How to Half-Ass Porn Webcomics. Webcomics.
And that was the theme to this comic called How to Half-Ass Porn Webcomics the Tanza Late Way. The theme again was called How to Half-Ass, a theme to How to Half-Ass Porn Webcomics. Alright, and this is a comic by Aspetizer, and it's rated A. Love Aspetizer. He's a great person. Or she, I'm not sure. But yeah, Aspetizer is a great person. Okay, so continuity. Baines, you have a lot of trouble with continuity, don't you?
Tons.
Like, sometimes I'll be chatting with you and you'll be wearing blue pants, and other times you'll be wearing a red dress. There's just no commonality.
Yeah. Insanely frustrating, I'm sure.
Insanely.
Yeah.
So,
I actually spent a lot of time on continuity when I first put my comic together. There was a backstory to the characters, and it was originally, I've said a bajillion times probably, but it was originally an animated series. That was the idea.
yeah.
And I did a few episodes, and too time consuming to get anything done at any acceptable rate. I was never going to get anywhere before I died. So went to the webcomic thing, but I had this backstory, and some of it kind of appears in the animated series, which is kind of more or less deleted from the internet now, but it's still there. And like, I had this idea that certain characters knew each other, certain characters didn't. Some were kind of away for a while and came back. One character, Abigail, is new to the group, and all this kind of stuff. And that, whether it appears in the story or not, I had this idea that if I was solid enough on that, I could use it for future stories. As different elements that would kind of gel together, because I knew who was the new one, who was away for a while and came back, who had therefore had a block in their history to make a story out of, which I did with Penelope.
Mm-hmm.
And the Abigail's somewhat alienation from the rest of them. I've done a bit with that. In the new story I'm doing right now, there are some side characters, one of whom appeared in, I think, my first animated thing that I did. She appeared wordlessly but she was there. So it's kind of unfortunate. I could take credit for that, but that animated episode is pretty terrible and boring. So I deleted it, but that character has appeared in the comic also. She had a couple of scenes, and now she's going to feature again. Another character I had in mind, and this character are going to show up again, and I can kind of do a little bit of what I had planned for them from the beginning. So that stuff is great.
Okay.
Page to page, like I said on the Patreon thing, like I had some clothes change page to page. And there might be plot holes too. I'm not talking about that. Like, that definitely could be there. Or illogical leaps, maybe. I haven't really been called out on anything.
Well, your comic is so long that has the possibility to happen. Like maybe
it's going to happen for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you go on and on for long enough with enough stories, it's bound to happen.
Exactly. Pinky TA mentioned this in the video portion. I should have actually brung up like screens. I should have done that. Damn it, I'll do that next time. In Pinky TA, yeah, I like panel to panel continuity errors with colors of caps and just things being wrong from panel to panel. For goodness sake, and hairstyles changing. Like, well, Pinky's hairstyle's a bit of a pain, but that's not so much a thing because I'm aware of it, but I wasn't aware of these caps until the damn thing was online, but no one noticed. Not a single person has ever commented on that. So,
yeah,
people are forgiving. But yeah, continuity is tough. It is, because you just don't notice this stuff yourself. Like, your readers don't notice it, which is great, but you don't notice it either. So that's why it can be hard to fix until way later, like sometimes years later, looking back on this stuff.
And there's a continuity of, we should go to Tans, but a continuity of art style that I definitely...
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's made me think maybe I should go back, or not should, but could go back and sort of make it all have a more cohesive style.
I don't know.
I'm not sure if I'd bother.
Because one of the good things about webcomics is that the style grows and develops as you're doing it. Which I think continuity of style is only a thing if you want to publish it or put it in a different format.
Maybe, yeah. I'm a little torn. I used to agree with that, but I'm a little more torn. I read Emma's news post from last week, and she talked about she's redoing her early pages to have the backgrounds in particular. I think she's talking about to have it match, to give a kind of a cohesiveness or I guess a consistency, continuity to it.
Okay.
I think there's a good argument that could be made for that.
I think it depends on the consistency level, in a sense. Like, for example, if you read, and now I'm, of course, I'm not trying to compare anything or anyone with anyone, but take as 10. And if you happen to be a super fan and have all the stuff that is printed under this particular title, you can basically put them in chronological order, even if you don't know what was made first, by the level of the art.
Yeah.
So if you even have the very inappropriate for the times 10 in Congo, which is like super racist in any way. I mean, there is no way to not see the racism in this. But if you see the artwork in this particular title, and then 10 in America, which is also racist but less, and then you go, for example, to the Blue Lotus, and so on and so forth, you see a very specific and gradual improvement in the art that Hergé was putting out for 10.
Yeah.
And it is more, it tightens up, let's say, as it goes on. up to the very last one, which is like the best that he has made. And that is not consistent. But what is consistent is the creative choices that he has made for the look of the particular comic. The way that he draws the background, the way that he draws the characters, and the way that he chooses not to include shadows, for example, and stuff like that. So if you do that, I think you don't actually need to go back and improve the art. The art is what it is, and it was as it was when you started, and then hopefully it's gotten better.
Yeah, as long as there's a thread of consistency. That's interesting the way you brought up that you can tell how they chronologically how they fit together because of that thing. And I was just thinking of work that is done outside of chronological order, say like the Marvel movies, for example. All these bunch of movies that have been done, Iron Man and Captain America, Thor, all that kind of stuff. We all know these movies. It's super popular, and they have to keep in time. They have to keep a continuity in them, which is fine. We all understand that, and they have like an army of people that make sure that there is a continuity, and we all understand that as well. But those films were not produced in a time, like they're not produced in a chronological order according to, okay, this event happened before this event and this event, because say we've got like Captain America, like Iron Man was the first film they did in this modern series. So Iron Man happens and it occurs in like the early 2000s or whatever. The next one was, I think, Captain America, and that takes place in the 40s. And yeah, we have a flash forward into the now, but there's that kind of stuff. And then so like we have the whole Black Panther, and that starts in the 1980s or something like this, and then that flashes forward again. So these films are not done in chronological order, but if you watch them in chronological order, you put Captain America first, and then next up you have, I don't know, whatever next film you have, and you watch them in chronological order, I think that actually changes the meaning of things, and the continuity does not, the story continuity, the character development continuity that happens does not fit. It does not work properly. I think you really have to watch things in their production order in order to have the proper character development and proper story development continuity happening. That's my feeling. Sorry if that was a very long-winded way of talking about that, but
I like that.
Yeah,
I agree. Actually, I've thought lately about the idea of prequels and stuff like that, and like how to watch stuff generally speaking. And to be clear, I can't think of an exception. Like I think watching them in production order is almost always the way to watch.
Mm-hmm. I did watch the other day an argument for watching Indiana Jones, the trilogy, because there is no other movie except those three.
And one is a little bit, yeah. Go ahead.
There is no other.
Exactly.
Okay, so there was this argument to watch the movies in the storyline chronological order, to the point, if you were super dedicated, that you would sort of start with the introduction in movie 3, which is
there's a little part at the beginning where Indy's a kid. Yeah.
Then fast forward to Temple of Doom, where it's theoretically the one at his earliest.
Yeah, it's a year before Raiders.
Exactly. Then go Raiders, and then finish the Holy Grail. And the reason for that, and actually I could see why that could work, is because you can see the development of the character of Indiana Jones as a very dynamic hero's journey, in a sense. So he starts off as a very idealistic kid. This belongs to the museum. That whole thing going on. Then he's disillusioned by how the authorities side with the bad guys, and so he becomes a very jaded and mercenary style guy in Temple of
Fortune and
Doom.
glory, kid. Fortune.
Yeah, and then he starts, going through his experience with the village and the kids being stolen, no, taken away, kidnapped, uh, and actually choosing to do something that is not for personal gain. He goes on to this path of redemption, going back to his original idealism in a sense. Then with Raiders of the Lost Ark, he goes up against the Nazis a little more, and he gets, the last towards the last arc of his story, which is the Grail and coming to terms with his own existential stuff and being basically a more mature version of his childhood self.
Yeah.
But that's the only argument I have ever seen that can work well.
Yeah, it's not bad. And you get a glimpse of the father, or you hear his voice, I guess, in the beginning, and then he finally comes and plays a major role in the last
Exactly, yes.
chapter of the story.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that argument can be made. Yeah.
But never for nobody else. I mean, that would be the exception that justifies the rule, I think.
My problem.
It's funny how those films all stand alone. They stand alone more than any of these.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of the Marvel movies, but
Yeah.
interesting.
My problem with that is my problem with all of the chronological things, is that if you watch it in production order, not only do you see there's the in-story version of the character that you're talking about. So as he develops in his way of thinking and life or whatever, there's that. But there's the outside story version, like the external view of the character, how he develops, like from an observer's point of view. So you see, like in Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, he's rendered in a particular way. So he's very much stock, like very strongly influenced by the whole what is it, the Temple of Gold guy, like this 1930s pulp hero. He's based on this, the Burroughs kind of Burroughsian, I think, kind of a character, and that is him. And he's got a bit of Harrison Ford in him and a bit of Lucas and Spielberg, but he's still a very Burroughsian kind of American adventure hero. And as those movies go on, then we see the Temple of Doom and the Grail and stuff like that. He's more of his own character. So that is, from that point of view, I'd say it's better to watch it in that original kind of format, because the character changes as the movies go on and it becomes something different. So this is a big thing to me with Discworld. The Terry Pratchett, he's a great author. He was a great comic author, comic fantasy. They're fantastically entertaining books, the Discworld. But if you read the Discworld chronologically, it's a nonsense. It makes no sense. You've really got to understand it properly. You've really got to read it in production order, and that will give you a more a better view of the world and the creation, simply because his philosophy of writing and his style changed so much over the course of the 20 or the 30 years that he wrote that series. It starts out as a very kind of wild romp It's a parody, a spoof, a crazy spoof of fantasy, and basically sword and sorcery fantasy mainly. You know, really traditional, sexy, ridiculous, that kind of fantasy. That's what the world is, and it's very raw and wild and crazy. And as the series progresses, it becomes very, very much more serious, very much the world becomes more coalesced into this like a 19th century fantasy world. Like in the beginning, it wasn't that at all, but it becomes a 19th century fantasy world, and it's used in order for Terry Pratchett to talk about like philosophical ideas about justice and rights and that kind of stuff. And that's not what the world is. So if you read it in a chronological way, like, okay, so this is the story that takes place earliest in the character development, and then we move on to this, then you're developing, like, the world won't make sense anymore, because that is not the way, you know, the world was completely different in the earlier novels. So you're reading this like chronologically, but the world's like jumping around all over the place. Like, oh, the world is wild here, the world is standard here, you know, like this has a philosophy, this doesn't have a philosophy, and that makes a nonsense out of it. So this is this other aspect to the whole thing. It's like your writing style changes, your philosophy changes, your ideas change as you're producing it, like a long form creation. So the chronology of the thing isn't the only continuity you have to worry about. It's stylistically there's a chronology there as well. That's the thing. I don't know if you guys have like experienced that in any of your creations. Like, okay, Star Wars, that's another big example. Okay, so if you were to watch that in a chronological order, it makes no sense, because you start out with the prequels, and that version of the world is like super childish and boring all in one thing. Like, we've got adult and childish stuff all cludged together, and dialogue that doesn't make sense, and boring plots and stuff like this. So we've got that world done in that particular style, and then we jump ahead into the 1970s original movies, and suddenly this is a very different world, and it doesn't carry on. Like, there's no thematic common thread between these things. It's just that the sets are sort of the same, and like they've got lightsabers and stuff.
They just the thing is that in the prequels they are doing world expansion more than actually, you know, organically working on the plot or whatever. Whereas in the original trilogy, they were setting up the world, and it was a completely different approach. And that is another reason why I am actually not a fan of prequels in general, in the sense that unless you have absolutely mapped it out and you know exactly what the prequel is going to look like, even as you are making the current, whatever it is, then it's best not to go prequel and just go sequel all the way, go linearly, and do the world expansion as you also expand and advance the story, because you run fewer risks of retconning things or doing things that might not make a lot of sense with the original work. Like the way, for example, take Obi-Wan in the originals, I will not even consider the sequels right now. Let's compare and contrast with the Obi-Wan of the prequels. The way that he talks to Luke about his father and the way that he explains away certain things doesn't jive very well with how he has experienced Anakin and how he has experienced Darth Vader in the first place. I mean, you would expect him to approach, even if he wanted to do this sleight of hand Darth Vader killed your father because basically he fell to the dark side and became someone else, you would expect a different wording, different nuance, and different ways that the character would emote,
Mm.
knowing
Mm.
what you know from the prequels.
Exactly.
Whereas you didn't have the prequels, then what you see is what you get, and that's fine. And then in a sequel, you could have more nuance. You could have more exploration of
Mm.
Obi-Wan and Anakin and things like this, and you could expand on the Force ghosts and blah blah blah, and just do world building from there without actually undermining your own stuff.
Yeah, and for me, well, in terms of Star Wars, I would say I don't mind people doing prequels. I don't mind it, but it's with the understanding that prequels would always have to be watched as prequels. That means you never watch them in chronological order as a standard thing. You only do that if you just, have like having fun. But the proper way to watch it should always be watch the original series, then watch the prequel, then watch the new sequels. That should always be the way to do it, because stylistically that makes sense. Like you're saying, they're setting up the world in this original one, so you have to be introduced to the world in the way you're meant to be introduced. The prequels don't introduce the worlds, like you're saying, they expand upon the world. That's the thing. I mean, even though they expand it in a silly way, but like in the originals, there are specific things as well. Like it was only meant to be one film originally. Like there's this idea that it was meant to be this huge thing. This is episode 4. That was invented afterwards. This was the episode 4 stuff is like, as we've talked about before, that's like a nod to the pulps and the funny sci-fi shorts and stuff like that. So like the episode 1, 2, and 3, like a mythical, that was like it's like just a fun stylistic thing, like to pretend there was something bigger behind it. It was just a fun thing. So yeah, you watch this as a single movie and it ends as a single movie. It wasn't even meant to have sequels. That was just like happenstance. I was lucky. So that's how you watch it. Then you watch the second one, The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi, and the world gets open to you. But there's certain things that happen in the first film that, like Luke and Leia kissing. That wasn't like some clever incest like sub story. That was like, yeah, they actually could be lovers because
He was the boy that was the knight that would get the girl originally.
Yeah, they didn't even know they were going to be brothers and sisters. That actually happened later. That wasn't even written.
Exactly.
So yeah, that was. I mean, I don't think Darth Vader was even his dad then. That only happened.
Probably not. No, he was the guy that killed his dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally.
That happened
like
in the second film.
That was a retcon later, which I have to say, where retcons go, it was done as well as you could do a retcon. Like I could go along with it. I could go along with it the way that they did it. Which is not like it could have been done perhaps a little better, but at least I could see why a manipulative ghost would not want to tell the bright-eyed idealist kid that, you know what, the bad guy is your father.
Oh yeah. Like he's not ready to know that. That rationale totally makes sense. I didn't realize that was a later decision and not part of the larger original story that George Lucas had in mind that he cut down to make the first movie.
Yeah.
But another thing that I would like
works well for me.
it did. It works for me as well, and it actually, you know, uh, pushes down a peg, knocks down a peg, Obi-Wan, that he is not like he can be manipulative. He is a little bit of a sly bastard,
Right.
uh, whether or not it was done for good. um, but I want just going back to the whole continuity thing. Continuity
Yes.
go in a retrospect as well. So when you are writing a prequel, you have to do the reverse continuity, which can be extremely hard. And because I have written a prequel, but it's to my defense, it's a short, like it's a very short vignette, so, not vignette, but like a short story. It's four short stories exploring like Kodak moments, exploring a main character's previous years, and it's from The Art of Ailing, where and it is about Aaron, and Aaron is a very he has a very big development arc in the actual books. In that, and it's not really a spoiler. I mean, okay, you can you see him in the beginning as a very uh, un uncouth guy who observes caste stuff very much, and he has a very weird but and rigid approach to how he deals with people. But at the same time, he is not toxic. He actually is going to help more than not help. And then he has this character development where he breaks away from social restraints in a way, and he stops informing his own identity and the identity of others by which social class they are and stuff. So, and he becomes very much. I mean, anyone who has read the books loves him more than my actual main character, who is the girl. They like him more than because he does all that. So going back to write him as a young teenager and then as a young adult was agony because I had to write him with all the problems that he had and that he begins with in the actual books. So, and I had to show how he got and where he learned to be that kind of a bastard, and actually write him as a bastard while still keeping him sympathetic and exploring certain things that I knew would come up and make him react in certain ways in the books. But it's like you have to regress all the development that you have done in characters and not have them react in how they would react as they are now, but as they were before. And that can be very hard to maintain in a prequel because you want them to react in the way that you would prefer as an author, and also because you know where they are going to end up. And so keeping them, for example, he found himself in a situation where this low-caste woman was being harassed, and then she got raped by this high-caste guy. And I know that in his later stages, he would immediately pick up on that and not dismiss it and stuff like that. But in his previous self, he would not. And it was really painful to write, but I had to write him that way. So that continuity has to be maintained in a prequel. And I don't really see it often. That's the long-winded punchline to all of this. Yes. Don't write, they're bad.
You do notice that in some prequels and stories like that the character, like they'll do an early version of the character and think, hang on, this character is evincing like personality development that must have happened across, like episodes and episodes, or like pages and pages and pages. And it's happened too early. These characters shouldn't be aware of those things or think in those ways because they weren't like that originally. So it just
Exactly.
doesn't bloody work. So yeah, you do have to be aware of that if you want to give the character proper continuity. You have to. Like, I was very aware in like Pinky. 'Cause Pinky's full of like prequels. Like, there's chapters that go in the past here and chapters that take place, further off. So like in like chapter 6 of Pinky TA, like where she's just starting out as like a lieutenant or whatever of these driving tanks. Like, she has a different personality in there. She's way more way more bossy and way more like self-aggrandizing and stuff like that than she becomes in the later books. She's way more like selfish and all this. So, and that was fun to write, to do that personality change in the character. And this stuff allows, like, prequels allow you to do that. But yeah, you should be aware that the characters like change chronologically. They're not going to have the same personality in the early stages, or they're not going to have that. Like in the first story of Pinky TA, she like has a bit of a character development, and like, she discovers like this horrors of war kind of stuff, and like takes things that are happening quite a bit more seriously. But obviously in these chapters where I take kind of snapshots from earlier in her life, she can't have had that experience. So I don't have her thinking in that way. So, that's something you do have to be aware of. Continuity is important. It's not just an art thing. It's, if your character's wearing the same shirt from scene to scene, it's personality and, knowledge and stuff like that as well. And, readers will notice those sorts of things more than they'll notice characters wearing the same shirt or a different shirt.
I mean, is that kind of thing harder in prose, Tans, than in comics? Because you're not physically looking at pages.
Yes, it is just as hard, I would say. And not just for the character development stuff. I would say that if you write linearly, and that's the one thing, I write linearly. I will start with chapter 1, and I will go on and write until chapter whatever, final. Unlike other authors that sort of jump around. I don't know how to do that. And it sounds chaotic and hellish to me. So I don't really know how they do that. However, one thing that is extremely hard to maintain continuity of is how the characters look, like the look of the characters.
Yeah.
The character height, which you would imagine in a novel, doesn't really pay much, hasn't much like weight to it. But if you want someone to look down at someone else, and he is the shortest person in the room, you have to remember that, because they will not be able to look down on them the way that they would like, and you have to account for that, for example. Or you have to remember that, for example, they are wearing their hair in a very specific style, and that might be significant for the particular scene, and so on and so forth. And I remember one scene that I actually had to use a map and have it in front of me, like taped to the side of the screen as I was writing, where I had, it is a scene of a very big and very chaotic council of war that is happening, involving 12 characters. They are all in there, they all talk, and they are all very significant. So I had to remember seating arrangements, how the room was, the layout of the room, who could see who, and there was a table in the middle where they had the map, the war map, but not everyone can see the war map. So I had to remember who can and who cannot see the map to adjust the
Yeah.
dialogue accordingly. So I had the whole thing sketched out like a marauder's map. Like I had the dots, like he's here, he is here, she is there, she is sitting here, lines of sight and distances and so on and so forth in order to
Yeah.
write the single scene for continuity purposes.
Wow.
So yes,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's still hard.
Oh yeah, I've done that in Pinky TA even. Like I've had to plan out, okay, so if this is going to be an indoor scene, where are people? Where's the door? Where's the windows? Where are the characters going to be? It's like, who can talk to each other because who's nearer and stuff like that. And I hate doing that. I hate it.
Oh man, yeah, it can be, it can be hard.
It's terrible. Oh, and the other thing that for continuity is hassle, and I hate it. I still hate it. I have done it. I know how to do it, and usually it works okay, but I still hate to do it. It's time lapses. How much time has to pass, for example, for the group to go from place A to place B? How much time passes for the message to go from place A to place B and then return? And how much time does the army need in order to march without stop from, and all of that, the time lapsing. The time lapsing is hell, and I hate it.
Yeah.
You need the map, you definitely, and that's another thing. When I started in fantasy, I was saying, like, why is everyone so pretentious drawing a map of the world like as if anyone is going to say? You need that damn thing, and you need it to scale in order to be able to calculate not only distances but also weather stuff, politics that is affected by the terrain, resources, you name it, and it has to be also continuous. Like,
Yeah, it's more something for the author than for the reader, which is interesting. The author only shows it because they're showing off something that they've created and they don't want to waste it. But for the author, it's way more important. Speaking of that kind of continuity, like I had that even in the latest page of Pinky TA, which I'm drawing at the moment. Like there's a battle scene, and battle scenes can't work unless you know where everything was from panel to panel. And I'm having to look at previous pages to see, oh, this thing is over here in relation to that thing, and this particular, huge machine is in this position. And it's very important to know where everything is in order to structure different panels and different scenes. And I've had to actually go back and redo this stuff and actually place everything in a bird's eye view of a map and show it where it is and rotate it and move it around to work out how is the best scene I can create of these things, keeping them in the actual proper relations to each other. And you have to have that level of detailed knowledge because in a battle scene it very much depends on where things are.
Exactly.
How it's going to look. And
And,
it's horrible.
I remember also, even in Without Moonlight, I have had, I have continuity errors in Without Moonlight that are quote unquote superficial in the sense that there is this one wound that travels in one chapter. I will not say which chapter and what wound it is, but it changes places. So there's that. And I do have some jackets that change color and become the color of the shirt, and the shirt becomes the color of the jacket, and things like this. But okay, they are not as important to the story itself, in the sense that they don't hurt the story. It only hurts the eyes of the people that notice it, and I apologize for that. However, there was the continuity that is a complete hassle is again the time lapse and keeping the dates realistic. So actually one entire scene that I have, which is the train scene in Without Moonlight, exists in the way it does so that I could get Fotis and his group to the village that they are right now in time for the particular trial that's taking place to happen at the time that it did take place, and also for the sabotage thing that's going to happen to be on time, to be exactly at the date that it happened. So I wanted them thankfully Greece is small enough that you can get anywhere in a few hours if you have the right means of transportation, hence the train. So, but that was like, I remember that I was telling myself, how in all blazes am I going to get him there in time without a plane or a jetpack or something. And eventually I came up with the whole train idea and made it interesting, I guess. So.
Scrap that jetpack, damn it.
Yes, the jetpack would be more fun. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I had bloody continuity like worries in Bottomless Waitress, like, because I hadn't read ahead as I should, and like the way it was written, like in towards the end of this chapter here, like, you know, Polly is seducing Craig, and like, so she's taking her uniform off in a very seductive way. And because I hadn't read ahead, I've got like Polly and Jane in this, like, you know, it's the finished work and they're washing up in the shower. And like, only, like, you know, the way
you're selling this comic to some people right now, by the way.
I hope so. But the way you'd written it, like, I would have supposed, like, you know, so Jane is like washing up after work, like actually washing in a sink, like washing like dishes and stuff. But I interpreted it as Jane having a shower. You know, I thought, whoa, I could do this really sexy. And I've got like Polly and Jane, like washing, like, you know, nudity and stuff like that. So it's an excuse to do this, but that's not the way that you'd written it. And so my interpretation already like had diverted, but it means like I have to, when I read the next page and like, okay, so we've got this seduction with Craig and stuff like that, then I realized, like, you know, like I've got these characters like getting dressed in their normal like civilian clothes and having a chat and then talking to Craig, and I'm thinking, why the fuck is he still at the restaurant when these two women have been washing up and stuff, and he's been waiting on, what the hell has he been doing there? And you know,
Yes.
like, so I've got, and this is my problem, this isn't the way like Baines has written it, this is because I have interpreted it the wrong way and not read ahead. And so, you know, I'm like thinking, okay.
Be honest though, the way that you did do it, she actually had more stuff to take off sexily, because
Yeah.
with her uniform, she doesn't need to take off anything to seduce him anymore.
There's that.
Yeah. Pull off the apron. Yeah.
Yeah. The
But-
apron actually might be, you know,
It doesn't even have to pull it off, it just look it up. But yeah, but that was the thing, that was like, I had not read ahead, and I've had to work out, okay, so how do I get her to seduce him and be naked? I have to have her actually stripping off all these clothes that she's wearing, and I have to actually draw that, and drawing someone taking off clothes is not easy. So I had to like do research about that. What positions do you have to go in to take off clothes? That's not trivial to draw, you know?
Yeah.
So I made a rod for my own back. So yeah, continuity can bite you in the ass in every single way possible. That's the thing. So yeah, be aware. Read ahead, people. Don't be like me and be like, like Sterling Archer and just throw out the script. Actually, read what you're gonna do. Okay. Well, we're sort of at the hour and 15 minutes record time.
Went by fast.
Yeah. Blasted through it. And this was a very fun topic.
Yeah.
Continuity. Well, thank you very
There's
much.
more to it too. It's like where are these characters at emotionally?
Yeah.
Talking about taking a long journey. It's like, okay, well, like now it's a day later or whatever it is. Like, where's everybody at? Like, do all the characters have their own something they want, or things they don't know, or unresolved things with other characters, or like, what's their agenda? You have to kind of remember stuff like that. Like, yeah, pretty tough.
That is a freaking nightmare, that stuff. Yeah, getting in each other's characters' heads and remembering, that part. Ugh. I get characters' names wrong. Like, I can't remember, like, I've got these, like, I introduced, like, this whole bunch of ensemble cast in Pinky TA6. Colin, Dave, Betty, and Pinky all together. And I always forget which of these guy characters did I keep into the future. Did I keep Colin or Dave? Who is this character? And he was meant to have a broken nose and all this. One of the male characters, and I can't remember which one it was. And is his nose still broken or what? Like, I can't remember that. And I'm not alone. This actually happens with with all the pros as well, like Stan Lee, like Bruce Banner. Is he called Bruce Banner? Is he called like Robert Banner or something? I can't remember. Like, he couldn't even remember the character's name. Like, the Hulk was meant to be grey, and then he turned green, and
Yeah, and then writers later sort of picked up on that and like explained it.
Yeah.
Sort of made a meal out of that, which was cool.
Also, guys, I remember that another continuity thing is that if you supposedly place a character in the past being present in a specific situation or aware, and then you forget and you write him as not having known, and you finish the scene, and then you remember that, wait, they were there. They would know about this.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's embarrassing.
Yes.
I've
or
done
the opposite, right? Like, this character has never met this other character, like, and now they're meeting for the first time. And I hear about even like, well, I mean, not even, but especially maybe big movies, like big Marvel movies and stuff. Like, it'll be actors who correct these things by reminding the writer director, like, oh, I've never met this person. Should I acknowledge that I've never met Ant-Man or whatever? It's easy to lose track.
And that's a good thing in the sense that you do need the third pair of eyes or a second, third, fourth, fifth pair of eyes to pick up and spot these things. Because eventually you will, but it might be too late in the sense that you have published the stuff and now it's there for people to find and make YouTube videos about if you ever become famous.
Oh yes, they make a meal out of that.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, there was this guy who apparently started out as like a fan of Marvel comics, like really, really loved them, and he loved them so much, like he was obsessed. He wrote a Bible about every single character's continuity and would write in and like correct people if they got the continuity wrong. And he was so good at it that they hired him as a writer, and he became one of their like chief editors. Like he became like the boss of Marvel for a while. And he did, and apparently they still use his continuity Bible to like to work out the continuity of the characters, like, and to correct errors and stuff, because it was so good. So, yeah,
Do you remember
that's
the name?
no, I can't. Probably if you just Google search like a continuity Marvel continuity expert, you probably get him.
Yeah.
I'll do that right now. Like we're a bit over time, but I'll do it. Like okay, Marvel continuity expert.
Okay.
Cont. Okay, there we go. Was it Tim Variance? Oh, Time Variance. Oh, sorry, you idiot. That's not a bad person. Oh. No, it'd probably take a lot more searching to find it. But I don't know. Walt Simonson, Sal Buscema. No. This would take a long. Mark Gruenwald. Maybe that was him. Mark Gruenwald. Does that sound right?
Well, I know the name. Yeah, I know he worked at Marvel and he did Gru with Sergio Aragonés.
Did he?
Mm-hmm. Did the translations, I think. Or wrote the dialogue, the English version of the dialogue.
All right, that could be it. Mark Grunwald. That possibly it. Okay, so anyway, we've gone way over time here, so we should wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening to this long, interesting cast about continuity and all the problems and things involved in it.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.